I never thought I'd see something so ridiculously arrogant that it would actually disrupt a funeral procession. But after spending 3 years in Oakwood Estates, I've come to understand that there's really no end to what certain people will do when they think they're in charge of the world. Our HOA president, Karen Wilkinson, had always been difficult with her constant patrols and violation notices for everything from slightly tall grass to minor landscaping infractions. But what she did last Tuesday was something else entirely, something I didn't think anyone would actually attempt. Before we continue, drop a comment below telling me which country you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel The HOA Story Time. It was a cold, quiet, and heavy morning. My neighbor across the street, Mr. Jenkins, had just passed away following a long struggle with cancer. He was a retired military man who was genuinely respected by the entire neighborhood. Everyone, that is, except Karen. She and Mr. Jenkins had been clashing for years over the American flag displayed prominently in his yard. Karen claimed it violated the neighborhood's aesthetic guidelines, though what that actually meant was anyone's guess. The man had defended our country for 30 years, but apparently his love of country didn't fit with Karen's idea of the perfect suburb. The funeral procession was arranged to pass through our neighborhood because Mr. Jenkins had specifically requested it in his will, one last drive past the home he loved. His family had worked with the local police department to ensure everything would be handled with proper respect and appropriate escort. I stood out on my lawn alongside several neighbors, standing quietly and respectfully as the line of cars with their headlights on approached our street. That's when Karen appeared, walking quickly down the sidewalk with an angry expression that immediately told me there was going to be trouble. She had on her standard outfit, perfectly creased pants, a polo shirt with the HOA logo embroidered on it, and that ridiculous lanyard with her laminated president ID dangling from it. She'd actually had it custom made at a local print shop. A fact that still makes me shake my head. "What's going on here?" she demanded, scanning all of us with that self-righteous glare. "Why is everyone standing around like this? This is against our community rules." Section 4.3 specifically, "We're paying our respects," Mrs. Abernathy said quietly. "Mr. Jenkins' funeral procession should be here any minute." Karen stared at us in disbelief. "A funeral procession? Coming through here? Who authorized this?" As president, I should have been informed. These kinds of things require official approval. I couldn't help myself and spoke up. "Karen, this is a funeral procession. They have police protection and all the required permits. The family doesn't need HOA permission for this." She gave me that cold look I'd grown familiar with. Ever since I'd challenged her ridiculous mailbox violation at a board meeting and made her look foolish in front of everyone, I'd become her personal enemy. "I wasn't speaking to you, Mr. Harrison," she said with icy politeness. "And for your information, any organized activity that affects traffic patterns requires board permission. It's stated in our bylaws." Before I could respond, we heard the sirens of a police escort in the distance. Everyone around me immediately grew quiet in respect. Everyone except Karen, who was furiously typing on her phone, probably messaging her bored allies who always agreed with her extreme rule interpretations. The police motorcycle appeared first, followed by the hearse carrying Mr. Jenkins with the flag draped over the casket. Behind came his family's vehicles and then more cars with their headlights on, many with small American flags displayed. It was a moving and emotional moment. I noticed Mrs. Abernathy had tears streaming down her face. Then, right as the hearse came near us, Karen did the unthinkable. She walked straight into the street, positioning herself in front of the hearse with her hand raised like some self-appointed traffic controller. The hearse swerved to a stop, causing all the cars behind it to stop as well. "This procession has not been approved by the HOA," she shouted loudly enough for everyone to hear. "You need to take a different route. This is a private neighborhood and we have regulations to follow." One of the police motorcycle officers quickly rode back and pulled up beside her. "Ma'am, you need to get out of the street," he said in a firm tone. "This is an approved funeral procession with right-of-way." But Karen wouldn't budge. Instead, she stood taller and showed him that silly badge. "I'm the president of the Homeowners Association." "Here," she announced. "This procession wasn't approved by us. I have the power to prevent unauthorized vehicles from coming through this neighborhood." I could hardly believe what I was watching. Another officer got off his bike and walked over. Mr. Jenkins' son stepped out of one of the cars behind, his face showing both grief and shock. "Ma'am, you need to move now," the first officer said, his patience clearly running thin. "Interfering with a funeral procession is actually a criminal offense in our state. Step aside right now or I'll have to place you under arrest." This should have been the end of it. Any normal person would have apologized and gotten out of the way. But I'd learned that Karen Wilkinson doesn't do what normal people do when someone challenges her authority. She actually smiled at the officer. "You can't arrest me for enforcing our neighborhood rules on private property. I understand the law. This procession breaks our bylaws, specifically Section 7.2, which covers unauthorized public events." Her voice had that smug tone I knew too well. The officer gave Karen one final opportunity to cooperate, which she completely ignored. She continued standing directly in front of the hearse, hands still raised like she owned the whole street. What came next was both shocking and, I have to admit, deeply satisfying. The officer calmly walked back to his motorcycle, retrieved his handcuffs, and told Karen she was under arrest for blocking a funeral procession, creating a disturbance, and refusing to follow a lawful order from law enforcement. The expression on Karen's face was something I'll never forget, pure shock transforming into rage as the reality hit her that this was actually happening. "You can't do this to me," she screamed as the officer guided her arms behind her back and secured the handcuffs. "Do you even know who I am? I'm the president of the Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association." "Ma'am, I don't care if you're the president of the entire United States," the officer replied without emotion. "The law applies to all of us. Interfering with a funeral procession is a serious crime that can result in fines up to $5,000 and potential jail time in this state." A patrol car had arrived and Karen was put in the back seat. She looked toward me and the neighbors standing nearby, all of us shocked and stunned. "This is your doing, Harrison," she screamed, her face flushed with humiliation. "I'm going to have you thrown out of this neighborhood. The board will hear everything." I simply shook my head and turned back toward Mr. Jenkins' procession, which started moving again now that the disruption was over. We all placed our hands over our hearts as the hearse continued down the street, trying to restore the dignity and respect that Karen had tried so hard to destroy. By that evening, the story was spreading throughout the entire community. Karen had been taken to the county jail, booked, and had to call her husband to post bail. The charges against her were substantial. Interfering with a funeral procession was actually a serious crime, something Karen apparently never bothered to learn despite constantly citing rules and regulations to everyone else. The real turning point came 3 days later when the HOA called an emergency board meeting. I attended along with what seemed like the entire neighborhood. The room was packed so full that people were standing along the walls and even in the hallway. Tom, the vice president and generally a reasonable person who had repeatedly tried to rein in Karen's overly strict interpretations of our rules, called the meeting to order. "Given the events of this week," Tom began, speaking carefully but with clear conviction, "the board has made the decision to remove Karen Wilkinson from her position as HOA president, effective immediately." The room erupted in applause. I glanced over at Karen, sitting alone in a corner with her arms crossed tightly. Fury was written all over her face, but I could also see something else, the beginning of understanding that she'd finally gone too far and wouldn't be able to talk her way out of it. After the applause died down, Tom continued. "The association will also be issuing a formal apology to the Jenkins family for the disruption to their father's funeral service. Additionally, our legal counsel has advised us that the association's insurance will not cover Karen's legal fees since her actions were completely outside her authority as president." Karen suddenly stood up. "This is absolutely ridiculous. Everything I did was meant to protect this community and enforce our bylaws. You can't just, Our bylaws actually include a provision about board members who commit actions harmful to the community," Tom interrupted, holding up the rulebook that Karen had used like a weapon against us for years. "Your conduct brought negative attention to our association, created significant legal liability, and most importantly, you hurt a grieving family in our own neighborhood." The vote was unanimous. I watched the color completely drain from Karen's face as she realized the financial and personal consequences she was about to face. She'd have to pay for her own legal defense, probably thousands and thousands of dollars, and if convicted, she'd face substantial fines on top of that. But that was just the beginning. Karen worked as a real estate agent specializing in communities with HOAs. A scandal like this would severely damage her professional reputation and business. Karen grabbed her designer purse and her ever-present clipboard and tried to speak. "I'm going to contact my lawyer right now. You all will hear from her soon. This is a complete witch hunt and I refuse to accept it." Her voice shook, revealing the panic beneath her anger. As she walked toward the exit, she stopped beside where I was sitting and leaned down toward me. "I hope you got what you wanted, Harrison," she hissed so only I could hear. "I know you've been planning this from day one." I looked up at her calmly. "No, Karen. All I wanted was for you to follow the same rules that you made everyone else follow." Apparently, that was too much to ask. Her face turned red with anger, but for once, she had nothing to say. When she walked out and slammed the door behind her, I thought about how justice comes in different forms. For years, Karen had been a tyrant, making everyone unhappy with her petty use of power and her selective enforcement of rules. There was something fitting about her downfall being caused by ignoring the laws that actually matter, not trivial things like mailbox colors, but basic human respect and compassion for a family mourning their loss.